What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Martian MMA podcast. I am your host. My name is John, also known as the Martian, here to talk about this week's UFC card going down in Paris, France. We have 14 fights to bet on, headlined by Renato Moicano versus Cornolle-St Denis in the lightweight division, and just going to be a fun card top to bottom. These France cards have been a lot of fun so far. This is the first one not headlined by Sy-Jung in the UFC, so that's a fun change up. But I mean, the atmosphere, the fans, the fights have all really delivered in the first two events, and I'm sure this one will be no different. And I think they're actually making this one a little more competitive in terms of like the French matchups. You know what I'm talking about? Like they gave Gane, Tuivasa, and Spivak in his first two fights, and now Benoit's a big favorite, but I don't know, man. I think a lot of these French guys are in for tough fights. Several French underdogs in the card. And I'm interested to see this one play out. I'm excited for this one. Last week or 2 weeks ago, so long ago, no point in even recapping it. It was probably a below average card of analysis for me. And that'll do it in terms of a recap, we're 2 weeks removed. Everyone has already forgot about that. So let's just get in. Plus, we got 14 fights to analyze here and talk about bets. So we're going to start things off in the lightweight division. Balaji Oki taking on Chris Duncan. Odds for this one have Oki as the minus 180 favorite, Chris Duncan plus 155 using lines on Bet Online. And I took some Duncan at plus 180. I basically think that if he's able to get this fight on the floor, he should have good potential to win the fight. And Duncan has been looking to offensively wrestle in a lot more of his fights. And he's going to be at a striking disadvantage here. Oki has the hand speed advantage, is the better boxer of the two. We know Duncan is a little slow and hittable on the feet, so I feel it should be pretty clear that Duncan needs to grapple to win the fight, and I expect him to have more success than plus 180 indicates. I think if he can get those takedowns based on what we saw in the Tim Kwamba fight, Kwamba, short notice featherweight, took that fight on a week's notice, and even he was able to take down Oki and keep him on the ground to win a round unanimously, and then even have a kind of a competitive round 3 in the striking to take that to split decision. So I'm just not confident enough in Oki to put this price tag behind him here, man. I think maybe the slightest of favorites for Oki would be all right, but hopefully Duncan comes in with the right game plan, wrestles heavy here, hits some takedowns, and can use that to win. And that'll be my official prediction. Duncan by decision, I'll go with. We're going to move on to the women's bantamweight division. Jacqueline Cavalcanti, Nora Cornolle, odds to this one. Cavalcanti minus 200, Cornolle plus 170. This fight is a rematch. Happened about 3 or 4 years ago. It was Cornolle's MMA debut, and Cavalcanti dropped her with a punch in the first round and kind of just outboxed her for the majority of the fight, winning fairly clearly. But that was Cornolle's MMA debut. France only legalized MMA just a few years ago, so she didn't really have an opportunity to get much experience, and you just saw how raw she was in that fight. I do think she's gotten a decent bit better, and she's a skilled fighter in the clinch with that Muay Thai background, very susceptible to being taken down, and will lose multiple UFC fights in the future due to being out-grappled. But Cavalcanti is just an offensive striker. She doesn't even really want to take the fight to the floor. In the first fight, Cornolle fell to the floor a few times. Cavalcanti had the opportunity to get on top of her, but she didn't even follow her to the ground. So I think Cavalcanti should probably do what she did in the first fight, outbox her to a decision victory here. But considering that Cavalcanti's last fight was a fairly clear win for her, she outlanded Nunes by 10 plus strikes in every single round. It was still a split decision. That just proves that these women's MMA striking fights are tough to judge, and especially with the hometown fighter being the underdog here, I wouldn't want to lay juice on Cavalcanti. So I like end split here, plus 300 for end split, and I imagine it'll be a semi-competitive striking fight where Cavalcanti lands the better shots with the head strikes with her hands. And I'll go Cavalcanti by decision, but hopefully we can get a split, maybe even a Cornolle split, which is lined at 9-1. We're moving on to a fight that I'm looking forward to in the flyweight division. Daniel Barez taking on Victor Altamirano. Odds for this one have Altamirano favored minus 125 plus 105. for Barez coming back. I took Altamirano at plus money, plus 117 is where I got in a bet on him. And I think the dynamic here is fairly clear that Barez needs to either likely finish Altamirano early on, or Altamirano's pace cardio output should probably take over and lead to him winning the later rounds in a decision if it hits that. Daniel Barez has only been out of round one 3 times in the past 7 years, and all those decisions were close, split majority decisions. And he actually hasn't won a fight outside of the first round since December of 2019, coming up on 5 years. And, he lost that split to Hernandez. And then, what does he do? He goes and fights four bums, 10-9, 7-9, 6-9, 14-12 record. All of them are just journeyman bums, and he beats them all. He gets back in the UFC. He hurts Filo early on there. He, gasses himself out. Adrenaline dumps, gets finished. I just think this guy isn't really set to win fights as they go later. I don't think he has good cardio. I don't think he adapts as the fight goes on. Altamirano, he's easy to take down. He's fairly easy to hit, but this guy's tough. He has great cardio, and that's really what I think is going to win him the fight, is that cardio. And I could even see Altamirano hitting some takedowns and, doing some good work. I think he's going to pace him in the second and third. So Barez has a chance to finish early on. His round one prop is lined to plus 800. I think that's a good way to play him. But I think Altamirano really should take over in the second and third and maybe even get a finish. Let me check out what those odds are. I haven't checked them yet for round 2, round 3 finish for Altamirano. 1100, 1600. Those are okay. I do think it'll be a decision. The fight going the distance is extremely favored, but it should be a high-paced fight the entire time. And with Barez being a guy who we know kind of wilts, I wouldn't be interested in playing that over that GTD at all at over 70% juice for a guy who can look for a way out. So pass on that for sure, especially at 35 now for Barez. So I got Altamirano there. I'll pick by decision as the official pick, but hopefully he can get it done via finish in the second or third. Women's bantamweight fight next. All in Perez, Barez-Zheleznakova. Odds for this one have the Perez as minus 225, Zheleznakova plus 190. I think this line is fine, man. I mean, Perez, we know what she likes to do. She hits takedowns. She does decent work from top position. She usually maintains top position, lands some ground and pound. We just saw Daria get taken down 3 times by Monstrat Rendon, not even a wrestler. We saw her get finished on the mat by Melissa Dixon just a few years ago. I just think this woman's not good at wrestling, and the takedowns will be there. I don't trust her to get off a bottom. And, Alan Perez, she is a flawed fighter, but she can win fights via taking women down and just putting a hurting on them from top position, like she's done several fights in a row. So, I mean, if you're wanting to bet against Perez, the number one thing would be, I want my woman to be able to stop takedowns and to get off bottom. And Daria has not proven to be able to do that. So why would you even put any credence into Daria here? I know she's the underdog. I know it's women's MMA, but I have no interest in Daria. And I think Perez does her thing to 30-27 here. Sticking in the bantamweight, but moving over to the men's division, Taylor Lapilus taking on Vince Morales. Morales getting a second chance in the UFC here. Unfortunately, a tough matchup here. 365 favorite for Lapilus, 290 dog for Vince Morales. And Morales has done good for himself outside the UFC. I watched his last fight live. He beat Hunter Asher there in a pretty good performance. Just took over that fight late on cardio, really. Asher looked pretty horrible. Always been a harmless fighter, but man, he looked bad there. But it's just tough to see Morales winning this fight because the fight really should just stay striking the entire time, right? And neither of these guys really like mixing in takedowns. Lapilus is totally content to keep the fight on the feet the entire time. And the guy's sharp on the feet, man. He's accurate. He's fast. He has good striking arsenal. We just saw him butcher Cody Stamann in that fight easily, shucked off any takedown attempts and just, lit him up on the feet there. And Vince Morales, he's not really likely to hit takedowns at all. He's only hit 1 takedown in his UFC career, spanning probably close to 2 hours. So I see no reason to think why he's going to wrestle here. Even if he did, his wrestling is not good enough to really get Lapilus down. And on the feet, I think Lapilus is a few steps ahead. I don't know if he's minus 365 ahead, 77% chance to win. I could see Vince making it a little closer than that, but man, he's got a tall order here. A good striker in France on short notice. I just don't see Morales pulling this one off. And the odds are very privy to the fact that Lapilus by decision is the most likely outcome here. That's favored around minus 150. Tough to really even get a bet in on this fight at all. 60% for Lapilus decision. That sounds pretty accurate to me. So I think that one is lined accurately, and no reason to bet that one. We're gonna move on to the lightweight division. Ludovic Klein taking on Roosevelt Roberts. Klein, huge favorite, biggest favorite on the card, minus 950, 650 dog coming back for Roosevelt Roberts. Another one, I just don't really see any wagers to be made here. I think that Klein should have an advantage wherever he wants. He should light him up on the feet. He should be able to take him down and do work from top position if he decides to. Klein, not the best finisher. We saw him hurt Moises a few times in his last fight, not be able to close the show. So I certainly wouldn't be interested in laying juice at 65% on Klein ITD. That's pretty bad in my opinion. Maybe Klein by decision would be the only way I'd be looking to play the fight if the old surfboard can tough out a decision here. But man, I don't know. That seems like another good fight to just pass on, because I put no faith in a Roosevelt Roberts, and it should really be a cakewalk for Ludovic Klein. But he hasn't. The only guys he's finished in the UFC were kind of bums, right? AJ Cunningham, Sy-Jung, all the other wins for him are by decision. So I don't know. I would probably put Roosevelt Roberts in that bum tier of fighter. So the only wager I would be considering here is the decision for Klein, but I'm not going to officially endorse that one. I'll just move on. And we are flying through these fights. We are on the second to last prelim in the light heavyweight division. Omar Sy taking on Da-Un Jung. Odds for this one have Sy, big favorite, minus 625. Da-Un Jung plus 650. They had this guy's name as Da-Un Jung for like years, several fights, and then all of a sudden they switch it up to Woon. I don't know what went on there. I don't know. Maybe he got married or something, and in Korea they accepted. I don't know, but that'd be funny if they were mispronouncing his name for like 7 UFC fights, and he finally was like, "Hey guys, it's Woon, not Un," and they're like, "Oh, cool." Anyway, that's the kind of hard hitting analysis you got to put on this type of fight, because not much else to say. I mean, Da-Un Jung has looked pretty bad lately, man. I mean, got destroyed by Devin Clark, got destroyed by Olberg. Very different type of matchups there, but we saw him get out striked, we saw him get out wrestled. It just seems like he's kind of lost in there lately, man. He doesn't really have a good feel for the fights. He also got knocked out by Jacoby. He's on a bit of a losing streak here. I don't see much faith in Jung here. Sy, fairly unproven, only one fight in the UFC, but the guy's a grappler. He's good at what he does. He's going to get the fight to the floor. Jung, his wrestling defense is okay, and he has been able to stifle off some takedown attempts in his career, but once he gets put on the bottom, that's when you see that he's really bad. And his last fight, they said he was a blue belt. That's pretty bad for a UFC fighter. He did get rear naked choked by Carlos Olberg of all people too. So I just think this is a pretty bad matchup for Jung. He's likely going to need to find a knockout at some point on the feet, because I don't trust his work rate to win a decision. I certainly don't think he's submitting Sy here. And Sy, he's very relentless with the wrestling. I think he's going to hit the takedowns, and considering that he does go to the back takes fairly often, that he should have a pretty big jiu-jitsu advantage over Jung here. I wouldn't knock a play on Sy by decision at plus 130. The only question really here seems, is it going to be a Sy decision or a Sy submission? And I would lean sub at the price, honestly. So I'll pick Sy for a round 2 rear naked choke. One thing I will say though is Sy has only finished fights in the first round. He has a bunch of round 1 finishes. The fights that I believe make it out of the first round, they're decisions. Actually, I'm sorry, he has 1 round 2 finish, but 7 of his 8 wins inside the distance are in the first. So seems like his finishing ability does fall off a bit. That's something to consider. Last fight in the prelims, sticking in the light heavyweight division, Ion Cutelaba taking on debutant Imavov-Allen. Odds for this one have a near pick and fight bouncing around. Cutelaba, slight dog right now, minus 101. Imavov-Allen, minus 119. So, high variance fight here, obviously, like most Jan Cutelaba fights are. He's on a pretty rough skid lately, 1-4 in his last 5. And his last fight, he just fought so uncharacteristically, right? Ian Cutelaba, known for being a guy who starts fast, who fights like he has rabies. He comes out just trying to take you down right away. Versus Felipe Lins, he fought very measured, and it just didn't work. He had no success in that fight. He got relatively shut out for all 3 rounds versus Lins, just outstruck and just looked terrible. So you got to wonder, is Cutelaba going to continue to fight with that measured type of style, or is he going to go back to what got him his wins in the UFC, and that's just a crazy, reckless wrestler. Now, Erslan, tough to get a read on the guy. There is a somewhat decent amount of footage of him available, but man, this guy really could be all over the place. I mean, he's extremely muscular. He looks like he's on steroids, which Ian clearly is too if you look at him. And Erslan has good boxing technique, in my opinion. He has good combinations. He has power in his hands. He has stifled off some takedown attempts in some of his fights, but we've also never seen him really fight that high level competition, and he could be a much worse grappler than we think. But man, even if Cutelaba gets that wrestling going, he's always liable to gas himself out doing so and be tired in the later rounds. So like I said, very high variance fight. It's pretty stupid to be confident in this one, but I'm getting a vibe that Erslan is going to win. This is kind of just a vibe type of fight. At Pick'em, great fight to pick a side on, and I'll pick Ivan Erslan to get it done. It just seems like a guy I've predicted wrong before, where he doesn't look too special, but he's getting respect in the betting line, and I typically would go against those guys. I'm not going to do that here. I'm going to, go with Erslan to win the fight. Moving on to the main card, 6-fight main card here. Every fight features a Canadian fight or a French fighter. Well, technically Canadian too, I think, right? But we're starting things off in the lightweight division. Fares Ziam, Frevola. Odds for this one: Ziam favored -132, Frevola +112. So a week or two back, when I was looking at these lines, this fight stood out to me when Frevola was a slight favorite. Now he's a slight dog, and just watching the tape on this one, man, this is a head scratcher. I do not understand, because if Matt Frevola fights ideally and shoots a lot of takedowns, he should be able to easily out-wrestle Fares-Ziam and keep him on bottom, because we've seen Fares-Ziam get taken down just in his last fight versus Claudio Puelles, taken down 7 times, controlled for long stretches, made a lot of mistakes on the mat there. Even back in the day, Malarkey took him down a bunch of times, and McKinney submitted him. So, Fares-Ziam, I think, is a very flawed grappler, and Matt Frevola, coming from his wrestling background, should have a massive wrestling advantage if he chooses to use it here. However, you got to worry about the guy, because he seems a little more in love with his hands nowadays. He likes boxing. He got some knockouts, a few fights in a row by knockout. And then you got to wonder, is he going to fight suboptimally from here on and not use that wrestling? But man, I mean, if his coaches, if anybody, if he himself has watched that last fight, he's thinking, man, if Claudio Puelles can take this guy down 7 times and put him in these bad positions, I have a pretty easy path to victory. So I don't understand Matt Frevola being the underdog here. I think even if it stays standing, I mean, Ziam should be the slightly better striker, but Matt Frevola has power. He likes to brawl. He gets wild, and he has knocked out some good fighters in his career. Drew Dober being very a notable one. So I don't even think the fight is unwinnable for Matt if it stays standing, and if he intelligently mixes in his wrestling, he could look like the big favorite here. So pretty easy side for me on Matt Frevola, just waiting to see where the line goes. And man, this line doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, so I'm going to be going at least 1.5 to 2 units on this one on Frevola, and hopefully the steamroller can get things going over there in Paris, France. Moving on to I almost said I made a mistake, but no. Another huge favorite here, Morgan Charriere versus Gabriel Miranda. I said that Klein was the biggest favorite on the card. That was correct, but man, Charriere, big favorite here and shouldn't have too much trouble. No bets I see on the fight. Miranda is a predominant grappler that really shouldn't have too much success here and should probably get butchered in the later rounds. In the second and third round, that seems like the most likely way for Charriere to win, but the odds are wise to that. They know that that's likely. There's pretty shitty odds on those props, so let me just double check real quick on FanDuel what round 2, round 3 KO for Charriere is. I'm betting that it's going to be like the worst we would ever see, which is in the 2s, +2 something. Let's see if I can actually pull it up, or bitch ass FanDuel's app stops giving me glitches, and we got it. It is at 200. Oh man, that's seriously as bad as I've ever seen it. So I don't know, man. Another fight where you probably have to pass. And that's going to do it for that one. Moving on to the welterweight division, very good fight here. Kevin Jousset versus Bryan Battle. Odds for this one have Battle as the -164 favorite. Kevin Jousset +144. Very evenly matched fight here, man. Both guys at 10-2, both young and improving, coming from different sides of the world. And Jousset, even though he trains in, I believe, the Anzacs, Auckland, New Zealand, he is a French guy, so you'd think that he should have the rub here in terms of maybe some judging favorability. And this one should really hit the scorecards too, as the odds indicate. The fight going the distance is favored at -200, and I just think it's going to be competitive, man, especially on the feet. I think I would actually give Jousset the advantage. He has a hard leg kick, a good jab. He's a good boxer. I think Battle's the more likely one of the two to mix in some takedowns, but Kevin is a little unproven in terms of his grappling. We don't really have a super clear idea of what to expect from that, but I just go with the plus money here in terms of a side. I think it's a pretty clear lean to Jousset for me. I have not placed a wager on the fight. I don't know if I will bet on Jousset at some point, but I do think he is the side, and I just trust him a little bit more. Battle's UFC run has been pretty fairly weak for him in terms of strength and scheduling. Excuse me. The guy's improving a lot. You can clearly see that he's getting in better physical shape. He obviously dropped down to welterweight. He's had success. He's getting better at striking and grappling and all types of things. So, I could be wrong about Battle here. I could be underrating him, but I think I'm just going to be going with Jousset at the plus money. I kind of think this fight should be a little closer to pick'em. So I definitely think that Jousset is the side here. Unsure if I'm going to end up on him, but I probably will. I think there's a good enough value on the bet around 145 to where a wager should be placed. So I think it's going to be a competitive fight, but I'll go with Jousset to win a narrow decision there. Sticking on the main card, going down to 145 here, William Gomis taking on Joanderson-Brito. Another French fighter as the underdog here. We have Brito as the favorite, -282, +242 comeback for William Gomis. Gomis is kind of a noodly fighter, man. This guy just loves going to decision. He loves being risk adverse. He doesn't chase the finish. He doesn't do a whole lot. Just not a fighter I can really get excited about. While Brito, man, this dude is the opposite. I mean, he fights hard. He goes for the finish. He has 5 wins in a row, all 5 by finish. And the last guy to beat him, the Philadelphia legend, Bill Algeo. That win is aging really well. And I just don't think that Gomis has any of the tools that really would give Brito a lot of problems. I think Brito's just going to track him down, swing big hooks in the feet to get inside, and then probably hit a takedown. Gomis, guy does not strike me as a good wrestler, and when he's finally put on bottom, like we saw in round 3 versus Francis Marshall, I mean, he got destroyed on the mat in that round. So I think Brito should have a big advantage once the fight hits the floor. I think Brito's wrestling should be good enough to get him down, and Gomis winning the fight would be very, very predicated on a very narrow split decision or some sort of Hail Mary body kick, head kick that catches Brito on the way in, and I just can't get behind Gomis at this price. I definitely can't get behind Brito at near 3-1. I do think the only way to play it would be Gomis or pass. And if you're playing Gomis, you also should have some of that decision at 350. But honestly, the money line at that point is just worth it. I actually don't think I correct myself. I don't think the decision is even enticing enough at 350 to take it versus his money line at nearly 250. So not a fight I'm interested in betting. Let's see what they have the sub odds at for Brito. 225. Yeah, even that I can't get behind. So tough one to wager on there. Some of the bigger favorites on this card I just don't really like investing in. And we're moving on to a great fight in the co-main event in the Premier Division, the one and only fight in the Premier Division on the card. Could have been the headliner, honestly. I wouldn't have. I think they probably should have given it a 5-round fight, honestly. But maybe they don't want to set the precedent of giving 2 5-round fights on a fight night. But I think this would be an instance where it'd be certainly worth it. Nasruddin Imavov taking on Brendan Allen. Odds for this one have Imavov -210, Allen +180. Allen on a killer streak lately, 7 wins in a row. Imavov doing pretty well for himself lately. He has that one loss to Strickland, that one fluky loss to Phil Hawes, which is a fight that I thought he definitely won. The no contest to Chris Curtis in a fight that he was going to win. So, I mean, he's been running really good lately as well. Both these guys are young and steadily improving, very well-rounded fighters here. But I think Imavov is the better fighter of the two. He certainly is the better striker of the two, but he's not really a powerful striker. He's a very precise and accurate striker who likes mixing up the targets. He does definitely have some pop. We've seen him hurt guys, but he doesn't have insane amounts of power, in my opinion. And Brendan Allen, we've seen him hurt at times, but I think he's pretty good at surviving, and I don't think he's going to get knocked out here. And Brendan Allen is going to be the one who's more likely to get the fight on the floor, where he should have a grappling advantage. But Imavov is a solid grappler as well, solid wrestling, and not easy to get down. He's good on top himself, even though I don't envision him being on top here. I think Brendan definitely more likely of the two to end up on top. And this one I think is competitive. And the one thing I don't like about Imavov is how he gives up control against the cage a lot of times. It seems like he's very content to almost let his opponents control him. He gets his breath back, he separates, he lands some strikes, but that's a dangerous strategy. You know, guys like Sean Strickland, Phil Hawes, even guys like Edmund Shabazian, have been able to push him against the fence and have some success. Roman Dolidze, that's where pretty much all of Dolidze's success in that fight happened, while he was clinching and controlling Imavov against the cage. Even Jared Cannonier had a lot of success with it. So I just don't think Imavov is too good at staying off the cage, and that's a concern against Brendan Allen, who likes to push you backwards and get the fight against the cage and work his chain wrestling in. He's obviously very gifted at keeping the fight on the floor and getting a back take. So I think it's dog or pass, honestly. You know, I think, as I mentioned in the beginning, Imavov is the better fighter of the two, but I can't get behind laying the juice on him here. And I like the fight to go the distance, man. When I was envisioning this fight, you know, what the line would be on go the distance, I was thinking it would be like minus 170, minus 200. It's at Pick'em. It's at minus 110 on Bet Online right now. I got to check what it's at on FanDuel, but man, I just think the finish is getting way overrated here. They have the most likely finish as Imavov KO at 2-1 or slightly under 2-1. Man, I think that's wrong. I think they're giving way too much KO equity to Imavov, and I think Brendan should be tough enough to you know, survive any big strikes here. And let's say Imavov does hurt him, I think he's not gonna follow him down to the floor. Maybe I think he might allow Allen to get up if Allen is, you know, looking to play guard and recover himself a little bit. We have seen Imavov finish guys from top position before, like Shabazian with that nasty amount of crucifix, but I think here he's going to be a little more, you know, aware of that Allen is still a danger. Even if he's on bottom, he can sweep and work his way up and maybe even get on top if Imavov gives him that position. So I think that is why another reason why I slightly like the GTD here, but I just think this one is way off. I think it's going to be a competitive 15-minute fight where Imavov slightly does the better work by landing the more damage and edging out a decision here, but I like the goes the distance. That's my favorite bet on the fight. And that's going to take us to the main event in the lightweight division. We have Cornolle-St Denis taking on Renato Moicano. Odds for this one have the hometown fighter BSD favored at minus 275 to Moicano, coming back plus 275. Tough fight to get a read on, in my opinion. You know, you got to imagine that Cornolle is going to be looking to, you know, mix in his wrestling like he typically does, but he's just a relentless fighter in general. He goes hard, and he just, you know, comes at you with a barrage of strikes and takedown attempts until you either get finished or he gets finished himself, like we saw in that last fight versus Dustin Poirier. He allegedly had staph in that fight. I think it's probably correct considering that we've seen him go at a harder pace than that and not slow down, but he did slow down significantly versus Poirier. But Poirier was just also extremely adept at punishing BSD on his way in, when BSD had those reckless entries where he was, you know, stringing together a few strikes and then looking to shoot a takedown. Poirier was just punishing him with nasty, accurate punches on his way in, which inevitably led to him rocking him and knocking him out with one of the greatest knockouts you'll ever see. And BSD is tough, We saw him take that beating at 170 versus ZDS. We saw him get destroyed in that last fight. He hasn't had a lot of miles on him, but man, I mean, that was a devastating knockout. So, I'm not saying that he's going to be washed or anything like that, but I think there's a little bit of reason for pause coming off of such a nasty knockout like that just earlier this year. And that fight just took him down a huge peg, right? I mean, he had been destroying guys several fights in a row without a ton of resistance, and then he got knocked out in the biggest stage of his career like that. I think there's a little bit of reason to have some hesitancy about how well and how easily BSD can bounce back from that. Meanwhile, Moicano is being underrated. I think, again, here he's been the dog in several of his most recent fights. He was a 2-1 dog versus Turner. Just a slight pick him versus Riddell, so I think this guy has been fairly underrated in the past few of his fights. I underrated him in the last one against Jalen Turner. Just really good, resolve there for him to get dropped like that in the first round, and for him to come back and just dominate his way to a finish in the second round there. Moicano's tough. We saw him eat some big shots versus Dober. He got cut up and beat up bad there, still dug out the fight and won it there. So I think Moicano is ready for another 5-round fight here. It's been a while. He had that one very, very short notice fight against RDA where he got destroyed in. He had some 5-round opportunities down to featherweight that didn't go his way. And now he's getting, finally a 5-round fight at lightweight on a full camp. So, I just think Moicano is being underrated here. I think he's going to have to go through hell early, but I don't think Benoit is going to put him in severe put him in severe risk of being finished on the mat, right? So when Benoit is shooting these takedowns, I think it could just be kind of wasting a little bit of BSD's energy, and he might land some ground and pound, but I don't think that's putting away Moicano. I think Moicano will eventually work his way up, and BSD he's wild, he's aggressive on the feet, but I don't think he is very, nuanced on the feet to the point where he's going to really give Moicano problems on the feet for long periods here. Like if this fight stays standing for 5 minutes straight, I'm pretty sure Benoit is not going to soundly outstrike him for the full 5 minutes. I think this fight is just going to be a typical BSD fight where it's a lot of car crash exchanges. It's a lot of striking mixed into grappling. It should have some back and forth in it. And, I think Moicano has shown several times that he is tough, he's resilient, and I think he has what it takes to maybe withstand that early storm from BSD here and come back in the later rounds. Now, it's a question of, do you want to take him before the fight or wait for a live bet, because I would say, is probably likely to lose the first round or two. I wouldn't disagree either way. If someone said, hey, based on the uncertainty of the fight, I'm taking plus 235 on Moicano, I wouldn't disagree. But if you also told me you're waiting for live, waiting to see how he deals with the early storm, I wouldn't knock it either. But I do think Moicano is going to be the side of this fight. And in terms of an official pick, who the fuck knows? It's not a fight I'm going to give an official pick on, because I really could see it going both ways. But I do think that BSD is being overrated in this line here at a near 300 favorite versus Moicano. And, you can point to Moicano struggling versus RDA, getting taken down and beat up a lot in that fight. That was on 5 days' notice. That fight has a big asterisk against it. And we really haven't seen Moicano face many wrestlers. He got taken down several times by Zubaira in his second UFC fight way back in 2016. Outside of RDA and Drew Dober hitting one lat drop on him, we've never seen him taken down. So this is kind of unfamiliar territory for Moicano, how he's going to react to a grappler. And based on the uncertainty and the lack of tape of Moicano fighting grapplers, I think he is the side here at plus 235. So, and I like his 3-4-5 props. I think before the fight, I definitely like some plays on Moicano 3. Hopefully we can get better odds than what they have on BetOnline now. Let's pull up the old FanDuel again. Nasruddin Imavov is taking some action on FanDuel. That line's moved a little bit in the past few minutes. Moicano 3, 18, 23 for 4, and 29 for 5. I like those. So kind of just, hoping the BSD slows down and Moicano can take over. And, Moicano I think if he gets on top, Moicano, I think he's much more likely to translate a finish than vice versa with St. Denis on top. So, hopefully Moicano can win. I think he's the more exciting guy of the two, but, BSD's a hellacious animal himself. So this is a great fight. I'm really looking forward to this card. The Paris card always brings good vibes, good crowd. And I think they brought a really good fight night to this card. I think the main card is built really well. Some competitive fights, some French fighters that are underdogs. So I like what the UFC has done with this card, and I'm looking forward to it this weekend. So thank you all for tuning into the podcast. Hope you're all able to get some good information, win some bets this weekend, and I'll see you all before the next UFC event next week. Peace out, everyone.